few shot prompting, where we put good examples of responses in the prompt, and it actually improves performance of the model. So let's say we've added few shot prompting, everything looks good, but our application is growing. And based on the query, we might want different response structure. For example, for order status type queries, we might want it to respond in this way. But for return policy related queries, we might want the response structure to be like this. So turns out that the number of good examples might become hundreds or even thousands. And we really don't want to put all of them in the prompt, right? Because that will confuse the hell out of the model. But we can fine tune the model with our data set of good examples. And that's actually a good idea. But the downside is it's difficult to incorporate new examples right away. For example, you have a feedback system and you're continuously updating your database of good examples, and you want them new examples to take effect immediately. Dynamic few-shot prompting is really good for scenarios like this, where we want to rapidly iterate and improve model performance. So in dynamic few-shot prompting, we maintain a database of queries and good example responses for those type of queries. We then create a vector store index from that database. And when we get the user's query, we perform a vector search using the query and retrieve 2 or 3 best example responses based on the query dynamically. And then we put those as the few-shot examples in the prompt. Now, let's see how we can implement this using LlamaIndex Workflows. The GitHub repository will be linked down in the description. So in the first step of our workflow, we take the current chat history and the last question and create a standalone question and extract some data from the question if available. For example, the user might refer to some order ID in our case. If we look at the trace, for which, by the way, I'm using Arise Phoenix with Llama Trace, highly recommended, really useful. So in the trace, we can see that the output of this step of the workflow is the standalone query and the order ID mentioned by the user. Now we can see that thanks to LlamaIndex Workflows, we can run the next steps concurrently. If we do need to fetch some data, for example, order details, we fetch the data in this step. In our example, we just use a mock database for demonstration. And at the same time, it'll create the prompt. While creating the prompt, it uses function mappings from LlamaIndex prompt template, which means that this function, a dynamic few-shot function, will be called to get the few-shot examples. This function takes the user's query, then it either creates or loads a vector store index. This index contains our good examples, and then it retrieves the top 2 most similar queries from our database. It then post-processes the nodes based on a similarity cutoff, and finally returns the formatted query response pair for the few-shot prompting. We can see in the trace that these are the 2 few-shot examples it retrieved for this query. Now in the answered query event, we wait for both the prompt created event and the data fetched event. Once both of those events are fired, we call the LLM, passing in the data, the few-shot examples, and get the final response. We also created a simple UI using Vercel AI SDK to demonstrate this. We can see that when asked about order status, it followed the same structure as in our database. And when asked about something related to troubleshooting, it followed the right structure as well. We can see that how this can be useful. If we have, for example, loads of different query types and each of them having different expected response structure, instead of fine-tuning the model every now and then, we can just update our vector store index of good examples and it'll just take effect right away. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Thanks for watching.